the big story of the evening last night and of the morning this morning is this whole blow up over Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez's story with regard to the January 6th riot. So we're going to break this down in all of its aspects because some of what she's saying is true. Much of what the media is saying is not true. And this really goes to how our fact-checking industry works. Our fact-checking industry here in the information dissemination space is extraordinarily corrupt. Extraordinarily corrupt. And today is like a classic story of how our fact-checkers get it wrong, and they get it wrong deliberately. It's pretty incredible. Okay, so let's begin at the beginning. January 6th riots happen. They're awful. They're evil. They're acts of criminality. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, this week, she put out a 90-minute Instagram video in which she explained her harrowing experiences. And it would not be difficult to conclude if you did not know the geography of the area that she was in the Capitol building itself. Now, let's bring up a quick map, okay? Because Capitol Hill actually is a bunch of places, right? Capitol Hill is not just the Capitol building. Capitol Hill is a bunch of different places. So, for example, the Capitol Hill like the actual Capitol building is not all congressional offices are actually located inside the Capitol building. Some of the congressional offices are located in what's called the Longworth building. Another set of congressional offices are located in the Cannon building. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez's offices are located in the Cannon building. In this map, you can see the Cannon House office building that is located all the way down First Street and across Independence Avenue. It's a little bit of a walk. It's about 0.3 miles. It's not like right next door, but it's also not super duper far away. There are tunnels that connect the U.S. Capitol building to the Cannon House office building. There's also the Longworth House office building, and that houses a bunch of different congressional offices. There's also the Rayburn House office building, right? All of these are located along Independence Avenue. They are not part of the Capitol building. They're part of what's called the Capitol complex, meaning that it includes, everything in the immediate area that is connected via tunnels. Okay, so I've taken those tunnels. They exist. On the day of January 6th, Cannon House office building was not breached. Okay, the rioters did not breach Cannon House office building. They did not breach the Longworth House office building. They did not breach the Rayburn House office building. They breached the Capitol building itself. Okay, so if you watched AOC's live stream, she never says that she's in the Capitol building. So let's be clear about this. She didn't lie and say that she was in the Capitol building. Some people are saying that she lied. She didn't. What she says is that she felt like she was in imminent fear of her life. Okay, and listen, you are entitled to your feelings. It doesn't mean that your feelings are entirely justified, as we will see. When you watch Katie Porter, who was in literally the same office, because AOC ran to her office, they seemed to have very different attitudes about what was going down that day. Here was Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez describing her experiences on the day of January 6th.
And so I hide behind my door like this, like I'm here, and the bathroom door starts going like this, like the bathroom door is behind me, or rather in front of me, and I'm like this, and the door hinges right here, and I just hear, "Where is she? Where is she?" And this was the moment where I thought everything was over.
Okay, and then she continued, and it turns out that the person who was banging on her door was actually a Capitol Police officer. Now, we know from the day of that Capitol Police officers were, in fact, getting people to leave the Cannon House building and move to safer locations. But Ocasio-Cortez, what she said, you should continue on in that video, she said that after the Capitol Hill police officer came into the office, she said, quote, "Things weren't adding up." Like, she added, there was no partner there and no one was yelling. He wasn't yelling like, "This is Capitol Police." He was looking at me and all this anger and hostility. She said, did he not say he was Capitol Police on purpose? Was he trying to actually put us in a vulnerable situation? All these crazy thoughts go through your mind. Are some offices safer than others because they have white-sounding names or male-sounding names? Okay, so this is the way that she tells the story. Okay, now, she heads on over to Katie Porter's office, which is right next door. So here is Katie Porter on MSNBC describing the exact same set of circumstances, except from her perspective.
First, she saw me, and we waved. I went into my office, and a couple seconds later, she knocked, and she said, could we come in? And I said, of course. And she began to, her staffer was trying to describe what had happened. And Alex is really usually like unfailingly polite and very personable. And she wasn't even really talking to me. She was opening up doors. And I was like, can I help you? Like, what are you looking for? And she said, I'm looking for where I'm going to hide.
Okay, so here is the thing. Katie Porter's reaction when Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez bursts in is not, okay, let's get in here. Let's barrier up all the doors. They're out there. They're coming. It's like, what's going on now? Why are you doing this? Okay, so is Katie Porter reacting inappropriately? I don't think so. In fact, AOC describes how she walks in, I believe, and Katie Porter sipping coffee, right? And so, and then Katie Porter is being told by AOC, I'm looking for a place to hide. And AOC is saying, I'm afraid I'm going to die today. I always wanted to be a mother. And then apparently AOC didn't have sneakers. She was wearing high heels. And so she said to Katie Porter, do you have any sneakers? And Katie Porter went to one of her staffers and had her give her sneakers, which, like, imagine you're that staffer. Like, if you actually think that the danger is that grave outside, and it's like, okay, staffer, I know that you're wearing sneakers right now, but let's be real about this. AOC has a lot of Instagram fans, and you are a no-name staffer in Katie Porter's office. I'm going to need you to give those sneakers to Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, because let's be real here, she has huge Twitter following. I mean, the woman has an enormous media presence, and you anonymous staffer, you just have sneakers. So you know what? I'm going to need you to turn over those speakers. Okay, those sneakers. In any case, what AOC says is not actually lying, right? So I've said this already. Her emotional response may not be well calibrated. I mean, that's possible. Or maybe it's really well calibrated, and maybe that's how she responds emotionally. People respond emotionally in crisis circumstances differently. Okay, to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Some people react like Katie Porter does, and they sit there and they're like, I don't even know what? And some people react like AOC and have a heightened sense of panic. Fair. Okay, that's okay. You're allowed to do that, for sure. Hey, Nancy Mace, who is 2 doors down, the representative, she said AOC made clear she didn't know who was at her door. Breathless attempts by the media to fan fictitious news flames are dangerous. She said, my office is 2 doors down. Insurrectionists never stormed our hallway. Egregious doesn't even begin to cover it. Is there nothing the MSM won't politicize? Because here's the way that Newsweek covered what AOC said. Here's Newsweek. Ocasio-Cortez said rioters actually entered her office, forcing her to take refuge inside her bathroom after her legislative director, Geraldo Bonilla Chavez, told her to hide, run, and hide. As members of the mob banged against the door, Ocasio-Cortez believed this was the moment where I thought everything was over. Okay, so the media immediately spin up AOC's story. She didn't lie, again. AOC's original statement may be an out of proportion emotional response to the events that were actually happening immediately surrounding her. But that's not a lie, right? It doesn't make it a lie. The media immediately begins spinning this up. The media immediately begins spinning this into Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez was in her office. The rioters were right outside her office. They're trying to bang down the doors. Now, here is the thing. Why was Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez's story leading the news for several days here? And there were several Washington Post editorials about how brave she was and how wondrous she was. Why was she leading the news? Of all the people who had relevant stories to tell on January 6th, she is like somewhere near the bottom of the list because, again, she was not in the Capitol building itself. There were legislators who were in the Capitol building itself. If you were looking for personal harrowing experiences, presumably you would start with them. Just to be completely objective and fair, you would start with the people who are in the most immediate physical danger, and then you would move on down the list, right? But that's not the way that the media treated this. And the media treated this way because Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is willing to say completely unhinged things, not about her own personal experiences per se, but she's willing to say unhinged things about other people, right? So she will just throw out implications like Ted Cruz wanted to murder me, or like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley are just like the person who sexually assaulted me. And the media lap this crap up. The media want to make that the number one story. They love the implication, right? So they don't fact check where she was at the time. That's not important. What is important to the media is the stuff that is not fact checkable, meaning her implication, which is that all Republicans are incipient murderers who wanted her personally killed and or are like rapists who want their victims to just forgive and forget, right? That's the part that the media loves. That's why the media spun it up. If Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez had just described her circumstance and said, listen, I was in the Cannon House office building, right? It's located about 0.3 miles away. It's like a 6-minute walk. There's some Capitol tunnels, but those were protected by cops. The building wasn't breached at any point, but I was in fear because I know that I'm really famous and I know a lot of people send me death threats and it freaks me out. And so when that happened, I went and I hid in Katie Porter's office and listen, I was scared. Do you think that would have made the SEM headlines? Of course it wouldn't have made the SEM headlines. The reason it became a headline is because she said she was a sexual assault survivor. And therefore, the people who were not on her political side of the aisle that she dislikes are just like the person who sexually assaulted her, right? That's why it made headlines. That's why you got the bravery of Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez routine from the media. That's the reason, not because of the actual circumstances that surrounded her. And this is why you have a piece from thelily.com saying, in Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, these survivors found a voice. I felt with her the deeply vulnerable pain of telling someone, right? This was also linked by the Washington Post. Ocasio-Cortez's explicit language around trauma may help facilitate other women's healing, experts added. And so it was all the ancillary stuff that AOC said, which really, truly was, I believe, immoral. I don't think that comparing fellow Congress people to rapists is a useful enterprise. I don't think suggesting that Ted Cruz wants you dead is a useful enterprise. But the media love that kind of stuff, right? That is the reason why her account became the account. Okay, so over the course of last night, a bunch of people pointed out, by the way, she wasn't in the Capitol building. And some people went further and said, and that means that she was exaggerating what she was saying. She was exaggerating her experiences. Again, she could have legitimately felt what she was feeling. Doesn't mean the feeling was totally justified, but she could certainly have felt that. I'm not doubting the veracity of her feelings at the time. And her account is accurate so far as I can tell. It's somewhat misleading in that if you are reacting as though there are Capitol rioters directly at your door and the closest they are is 0.3 of a mile away and you are protected by several layers of police, it's not quite the same thing, right? And you can see why people would draw that conclusion. Like the entire media drew the conclusion that she was actually in the middle of sort of the most dangerous area here from her description. So here's what happens. This starts to trend, right? On Twitter, the hashtag Alexandra Ocasio-Smollett starts to trend, as in Jussie Smollett, right? Jussie Smollett, the actor who described how he was lynched with the noose in the streets of Chicago by a couple of MAGA hat guys, and it turns out to be complete nonsense. Now, that's an exaggeration in and of itself, right? I mean, she's not Jussie Smollett. She didn't claim that the rioters had busted in there, right? She describes her feelings throughout the ordeal, and you can think that those feelings are unjustified. I hear that, but her feelings are her feelings. It doesn't mean she lied. I keep saying that over and over because I want to be very clear about what is true and what is false, unlike the fact checkers we're going to get to in just 1 second. So here is where Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez starts to really lose it. Okay, so she sends out an email from Team AOC to her entire email list. And her email asks her constituents to contact anybody in the fact-checking world or in the social media world and try to get them to censor and remove tweets that suggest that she was not in the Capitol building. Okay, I'm serious. Here's what she wrote. As we speak, right-wing operatives with millions of followers on social media are spreading flat-out lies and misleading information about Alexandria. But with your help, we can force Twitter and Facebook to take action and enforce their own rules. What's so frustrating about these attacks is that once the truth comes out, so few people get to hear it. Hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of people who have already seen or shared the misleading tweets or fake news articles. Okay, so first of all, the irony of Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, a person who has said on national television that actual facts matter less than moral truth. There is some irony here. This is a person who has spent the entirety of the last several weeks claiming without evidence that fellow Congresspeople, so far as I'm aware, she's provided no evidence of this, that fellow Congresspeople were in on the riots, that Ted Cruz wanted her murdered, attempted to have her murdered, that Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz are like her own sexual assaulters. And here she is being like, I can't believe people are putting out misleading information. That's really upsetting. But here's where it gets dicey. What is the misleading information? Okay, apparently the misleading information is that she was not in the Capitol building. So she keeps insisting that she was in the Capitol building because, in fact, she was part of the Capitol complex, right? This is what she tweets out. She tweets out, well, guys, it's connected by tunnels. She says, this is the latest manipulative take on the right. They're manipulating the fact that most people don't know the layout of the Capitol complex. We were all on the Capitol complex. The attack wasn't just on the dome. The bombs Trump supporters planted surrounded our offices too. Okay, so a couple of things there. One, we have yet to find the evidence of who actually planted the bombs. She can make an assumption it was Trump supporters, but that actually is not publicly available information. So that in and of itself is misleading information. And when she says that we were part of the Capitol complex and therefore they were trying to attack the Capitol complex in general, Nancy Mace was on the same floor. She says the rioters did not breach the building. Okay, reporters at the time said the rioters did not breach that building. Again, this is not to say that she couldn't have been justified or at least she couldn't have felt legitimately and authentically in danger. Again, people react to crisis in different ways. But what she is now saying, which is that, people are saying I wasn't in the Capitol building. How dare they? Well, were you or were you not in the Capitol building? It's called the Capitol building. Okay, it's not called the Capitol complex. When people say the rioters stormed the Capitol building, they mean the Capitol building, like a building, because they don't mean the complex, right? So she is now she's misleading. So she puts out this email and she says, we need your help. Here's what you can do to help us combat this campaign of disinformation and others in the future. Scan your social media to find posts with this misleading information, especially those using the trending hashtag. It's funny how Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is, her emergency mode kicks in when she is trending for the wrong reasons on Twitter. Right? As somebody who trends on Twitter frequently, like once every 3 weeks, once every month, I can tell you that the best thing you can do with a Twitter trend is basically ignore it. That's pretty much the best thing you can do with the Twitter's one. But she is, instead, she says she wants all of her followers to basically spam Facebook and Twitter and get a bunch of stuff taken down, which is not a great look for a sitting congressperson. She says, don't tweet any hashtags yourself because we don't want them to spread further. Identify any posts that are threatening or harassing and use the built-in report features to flag them for the moderators. Facebook and Twitter both have built-in tools for reporting posts and tweets that break the rules. The sad thing is that a lot of damage has already been done. People have already been misled and radicalized. They believe the lies to a point where their hatred could someday boil over into violence. So now she's going to say that if you point out that she was not in the Capitol building itself, that you are one of the kinds of people who distributes information that ends with the January 6th riots. I mean, that's pretty manipulative stuff right there. She says, we can keep calling out Photoshop tweets, fake news articles, misleading posts when we see them. Okay, now here is where the fact checkers get involved. Okay, so it used to be that fact checkers checked facts, right? That was the thing that they used to check, was the fact, not implications. They didn't fact check emotional suggestions. They didn't fact check subjective takes. What they used to fact check was, facts. And there are many things that could be fact checked here. So, for example, you could fact check whether she was actually in the Capitol building at the time. Or you could fact check whether she lied that she was in the Capitol building at the time. Right? The answer on the first is she was not in the Capitol building at the time. And two, I don't see evidence that she lied about being in the Capitol building at the time. And both of those things can simultaneously be true. But that is not what the fact checkers do, because the fact checkers are just Democratic operatives. They are just completely full of crap. So here is how the fact checkers do their business. This is how they have decided that they are going to pervert the system. And understand, it matters what the fact checkers do, because when we are talking about how you receive information, you will see that sites like Facebook and like Twitter, they use left-wing fact checkers in order to knock down right-wing sites, knock down conservative sites. And those left-wing fact checkers are taken as though they are objective metrics for the news. And Facebook was using, during the month after the election, they were using what they called their trusted news metric. It was like this quality news metric. And the way that they measured that is they went to basically a bunch of left-wing fact checkers, and then they would downgrade any news source that got fact-checked a lot. So naturally, CNN never got fact-checked, but Daily Wire got fact-checked a lot, because it turns out that the people at places like Snopes and PolitiFact hate the Daily Wire but love CNN, because it's all subjective. And so here is the fact check from Snopes. It's a perfect example of how the fact checkers are they just lie by implication, and sometimes openly. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so Snopes puts out a piece on this whole silly debacle. Right, here's what they say. Did AOC exaggerate the danger she was in during the Capitol riot? Okay, so first of all, you can't fact check that. There's literally no way to fact check that particular question, because that is a matter of subjective opinion. Did AOC exaggerate the danger she was in during the Capitol riot? So you could say, no, she didn't exaggerate the danger that she was in during the Capitol riot, because the Capitol rioters were violent. They were looking for Congress people. Theoretically, they could have gotten in and they could have hurt her. Or you could say, no, she absolutely exaggerated the danger she was in, considering no one breached that building. There were other Congress people on that level. None of them are acting like AOC did. So maybe she did exaggerate. So there's really no way to fact check that, right? That is a subjective matter of opinion, whether Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez exaggerated the physical danger that she was in the account that she told of what was going on. Now, again, there are fact-checkable things that Snopes could do here. They don't do that. They frame the question as a fact check about emotional response. You can't fact check emotional response, which is why I have said over and over and over that AOC did not lie, right? That is a fact check. AOC did not lie. Okay, you may think that her emotional response is off kilter. That does not mean that she lied, right? There are ways to fact check that are objective. That's not what the fact checkers are doing. Snopes says AOC was targeted with another round of bad faith smears after giving an emotional firsthand account of her experiences during the Capitol riot. Okay, so let's get to the actual fact check from Snopes, because it is so indicative of how exactly Snopes and these fact checkers operate. So here's what they do. They say, claim, this is Snopes' fact check of the whole AOC silliness. Claim, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez exaggerated the danger she was in during the January 6th, 2021 Capitol riot, and that she, quote, wasn't even in the Capitol building when the rioting occurred. Okay, well, those are two claims that you are now fact checking, and you are lumping them together so that you can pretend that a factual claim is a non-factual claim. Right? There's two claims that Snopes is now fact-checking. One is that she exaggerated the danger. That is not fact-checkable. And the other is a fact-checkable statement that she was not in the Capitol building when the rioting occurred. It is true. She was not in the Capitol building when the rioting occurred. How do I know this? Because Snopes acknowledges this. Here is what Snopes says. First of all, they say it's mostly false. Okay, the claim is Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez exaggerated the danger she was in during the January 6th, 2021 Capitol riot, and that she wasn't even in the Capitol building when the rioting occurred. Rating, mostly false, Mostly false. Okay, here's what they say. What's true? Ocasio-Cortez wasn't in the main Capitol building where the House and Senate chambers are located. Wait, what now? So literally you are fact-checking the question of whether she was in the Capitol building, and then you say it's true she wasn't in the Capitol building, but you rate the claim mostly false. Here's the best part of this. I love this. So they fact-checked one of the tweets that came from Daily Wire, because of course the idea here is to keep dinging and downgrading conservative sources, even when they are telling the objective truth. So here is the Daily Wire tweet that they called misleading. Why is it misleading, by the way? It's misleading because a conservative site put it out. Here's what the Daily Wire tweeted. You ready for this? This is what they are fact-checking as misleading. Quote, report, AOC was not inside Capitol building during breach on January 6th. That's the entirety of the tweet. Report, AOC was not inside Capitol building during breach on January 6th. Now let me read to you again from what Snopes says is true. Quote, Ocasio-Cortez wasn't in the main Capitol building. Why, it's almost as though it's true when you say it, but misleading when I say it, so you're just full of. That's the impression I'm getting from you, Snopes. Like, I'm getting the impression that you fact-checkers very often are more interested in fact-checking implications than fact-checking facts, because you want to come up with a preordained conclusion, and that is that anyone who criticizes Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez isn't just wrong, they are a liar. They are saying untruths. Right? No, that is not the way any of this works, but this is a dangerous thing that is happening right now in the country, because what you are seeing, I've been talking about this for a while, the shift from disinformation to misinformation. Right? It's misinformation. You know, it's information we don't like. That shift is so dangerous. And what the left has been doing, what the fact checkers have been doing, what the social media sites have been doing, is they've been fact checking implications. Whenever you see a fact check that says needs context, you know this is now a political exercise, because either a claim is true or it's not. When you say that a claim needs context, that is a claim that I will discuss on the show, right? I mean, that's what the show is for, is to give context to various claims. We'll discuss it. But context is a political argument. There are various takes on what context is appropriate to place things in. There are certain things in life that are factually true and certain things in life that are factually false. It is factually true. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was not in the Capitol building. Then there is the secondary claim, which is, did she exaggerate what happened to her? And there you have to really examine her emotional response. Was it appropriate for the time? How are other people at the area responding? Right? All of that is a matter of opinion. But instead what the fact checkers do is they wrap all that up in a ball and then call it false, a thing that is objectively true, which is that she was not in the Capitol building at the time. Now, why am I making a big deal out of this? I'm making a big deal out of it for a couple of reasons. One, the manipulation of truth actually matters. It matters an awful lot. And when you say that there are fact-checking sites that are out there to fact-check, and when you say that objective truth is really just your opinion, that is Orwellian kind of stuff. The redefinition of truth to mean anything I like, and the redefinition of falsehood to mean anything that I disagree with, is a dangerous thing, especially when you have the mechanistic power, when you have the institutional power to ram down your version of truth, meaning your opinion, on everybody else. That is a dangerous, dangerous thing. It also happens to be that the media have people that they love, and the fact checkers have people that they love, and they will manipulate the stats in order to achieve a given end. And you see this with Joe Biden. If Joe Biden lies or Jen Psaki lies, it's not a lie. It just requires a little bit of context. You're just not getting the full idea. And if Republicans say something that is true, but has the wrong implications according to the media, it becomes a missing context or mostly false statement. And then that is used to downgrade your ability to access the information. It is a mind F. Okay, that is what is going on right now. And it's really something that we all need to watch out for, because it's again, when this stuff is used to censor, and when you have, by the way, active Congress people sitting in the federal government asking for censorship of claims that they don't like that happen to be true, that is not a good look. That is not a good look at all. Facts don't care about your feelings, and it's a fact that The Ben Shapiro Show is the largest conservative podcast in the nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our content.